Okay, so what we have done is I have looked in the previous episode of 2QA onto how to assess a translation, in particular how to assess a subtitle or subtitles based on the model that's by House model, in which that I showed you how quality assessment is done. Now I'm just giving you more examples and I will discuss them in more detail so you are aware of how you are going to actually implement House's model in terms of lexical, syntactic and textual means, and in terms of participation, in terms of the quality or functional equivalence being the center of House's model, but in subtitling, and looking at all these social attitude, the addressee, and so on. I tried a little bit to shed light on that. I'll carry on in this one here. Let's have a look at what I have with regards to the film that we have, that I have been applying this. I mean, for example, idiomatic expressions. And here, of course, in the idiomatic expressions, you can see that, for example, this dino's deep dished. Okay, everyone, this dino is deep dished. Of course, this dino means dinosaur, which is a short form of the word dinosaur, and deep dished has a meaning that has been defeated completely or totally defeated. And here, of course, if we are to translate it, go for the denotative meaning of the source text, then we would not know what hazim and akra, or totally defeated, or badly defeated, or disastrously defeated. Then this is, of course, you have to rely on the functional equivalence, and covert translation is used and not overt, because we need to understand what is meant by the source text, and that is unclear from the source text. Again, here, let me just look at, for example, here, so why, just going back a little bit to a subtitle 0848. So why don't you all hit the hay and Lewis and me will get going? There's two elements here. One is hit the hay, and the second one is get going. Here you got, why don't you go to bed? This is hit the hay, and I will and we will leave. Both of us will leave, Lewis and myself. And you see the word Lewis and me, not Lewis and I. And this is another thing about covert, which is you need to understand what's meant by this cultural reference, and this is an idiomatic expression which has got some cultural load on it, loaded with cultural references, if you like, or one reference. So as you can see, translation is not a translation. It's just not only a linguistic act, but it's an act of communication act across cultures. So you see that's how it's done here. The same here, for example, about culture again. Crosses doesn't count. Crosses, we had a deal, and then he says the other, this is a dialogue going on, it's a participation element and so on. كان بيننا اتفاق الخداع لا يحسب. Cheating is not considered. Crosses doesn't count. So in other words, you're double crossing somebody. In other words, you're cheating against somebody. So and again, this is in 0909, which is idiomatic. And I've noticed that idiomatic expressions are mostly require this approach, which is covert translation. And the procedure is to use functional equivalence, and that is the element that you need to do that. Now here, in this one, just what the doctor ordered, and it's translated as, I know the ideal solution. I mean, here, if you don't use the functional equivalence, I'm afraid you're not, in any way, you're near to understand what is the cultural element here. Just what the doctor ordered, this is exactly what I want, really, or I know the exact solution, or the ideal solution. And here, for example, let's see if this rings a bell. Let's see if this will remind you of anything. Let's see if this reminds you of anything. And this is a convert. So you need to understand, this rings a bell. What does it mean? This is a cultural expression. So it's again idiomatic, and therefore covert translation is needed, and the functional equivalence is used as a procedure. Here, for example, give the boy a prize, which is in subtitle 0916. Give the boy a prize. The boy was right. This is how you translate it, which is a functional equivalence, and it is you have to consider context in which the text is done. Again, covert translation is there. Next one is even more difficult to translate, subtitle, and it is 919, where he says, easy peasy, rising cheesy, well. And of course, this is a term, a cultural term, and again, a cultural item or expression which requires functional equivalence. You need to understand the text and the context, how they are related, and then you translate it as, this is an extremely easy matter. And then, of course, this is, again, if you translate it, you can't translate cheesy and peasy and rice and so on. You can't translate it as peas, because easy peasy, it's relating to peas, but it's nothing to do with peas. So the denotative meaning is not really, the functional meaning is, or textual meaning is the one that you need to be aware of. Textual meaning or means will help you in getting it very good. Here again, see, this one is another element of a dream that was ruined in the last inning. I mean, you need to play cricket in order to understand the word innings, or golf. No, I think it is cricket. So you see here, he says, you won't ruin your the dream in the last tour, or in the last session, So you see, that is also cultural, heavily cultural loaded, and it requires you to be aware of that, and functional equivalence needed to be used. Here, for example, a dream of winning a little league championship. حلم الفوز ببطولة الأطفال. So ببطولة الأطفال. You see, the word little league is translated as children. A children championship, or children's championship. A children's championship, or children championship. No, I'm done. Yeah. I think if non-idiomatic are overt. Okay? Overt translation is used for the non-idiomatic expressions I have found in this subtitling, in the subtitling of this film, which are very successful. So in other, adequate, I think I would say, not successful, adequate translation here. You can see that it is using, most of these are using the denotative element here. For example, in subtitle 0911 or 18, you can see that it is using the denotative meaning of the text, which is spoken and to be written as if heard, to be read as if heard, to be written and read to be heard, actually, as if heard. So this is using the denotative. In other words, you're just not changing anything. لذا أخطط إلى تدمير قدرك. It's more or less the same as the source text. And then the next one is the same. Okay, everybody, it's been a long, hard day. Again, denotative meaning is used in the target text. And here, the word dinosaur, by the way, just an element we need to point out. Here, there's the word dinosaur fights. Earlier, if you see the previous recording, where he says dinos, or dino, a short for dinosaurs. So you need to know the context, the situational context. And the rest, I find all of them, just for you, I mean, that pointed, haired little kid, كل الشكر لذلك, all thanks to that pointy-haired little kid. كل الشكر لذلك الفتى ذي الشعر البارز. Again, denotative meaning and overt translation is used, so that's nothing to be concerned about. I feel that having looked at all of these, I hope that you have got a really good application of House's model and how it is used, because it's very, very important not to only read models, is to see whether they are applicable, especially if you're talking about a translation assessment. And translation assessment, to see the adequacy of the translation, whether the translation is adequate or not. How do you do that? According to House's model, is to compare between the profile, the textual profile of the ST, source text, with the textual profile of the target text, and see if the field, if the tenor, if the genre, if the tenor and genre and the mode are actually being met in the target text as the same as in the source text. Sometimes it was met and sometimes it was not. So there are matches and mismatches between the source text and the target text after the textual analysis that's been done. In this way, you will know if the translation is adequate or not. I would say it's not really just to match the literal translation or denotative meaning of the text, as you can see, as you saw earlier, but the idioms, the idiomatic ones, the ones that are heavily loaded culturally, are hard to translate because you need to understand what is meant by them, and therefore, because they are idiomatic and they are culturally understood only by the source language audience, you need to make sure that they are understood by the target language audience. So the text needs to be understood by them, and therefore you have to make it a little bit easier or understandable to the target audience. In subtitling, it's harder because you have to shorten it, and you have to know how many characters are used in each line of subtitle. And you've seen, I showed you about the characters, or the number of characters in each line. And what I meant by characters each line means the letters and the spaces and the full stops and the commas, or the question mark or exclamation mark are counted as a character in subtitling. So the first line will count according to the software. It will count how many characters in the first line, how many characters in the second line. For example, here, look at this here. I just sort of before we leave on this, you can see that, for example, in this one here, 22, the above one, I mean here it's 18 in the first line characters, in the second line is 21. Here you got 21 in the top line and 21 in the bottom, and here you got 32 in the top, and the bottom here is 22 characters. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to also be aware of the reading speed, because this is yet another restriction, and it is restrictive really, subtitling, and the softwares tell you automatically these reading speeds of 9 seconds, 9 per second, 9 characters per second to read, and it is 115 words per minute in the Arabic or the target text, whereas in the source text it is 14 characters per second, whereas in the target text or in the words per minute is 179. So here they have achieved better reading speed than here, because this is 179, whereas he is 115. So in terms of reading speed, this has achieved better. And even at a level of seconds, character per second is 9, here 14. So these are elements that you need to be aware of in terms of text production. These are very important in subtitling, and I don't know whether any of the other scholars have actually looked into this element or this point when they are applying the model, the subtitling model, the houses model to subtitling. This is quite, by the way, this is quite an original implementation of houses model, as far as I know. Perhaps maybe some of you who know more, whether in other languages it's been applied, perhaps if they could send me or inform me about any studies that's been done. This is my study that I have done, and I have looked at all these subtitles and see if the textual profile of the source text, which is audio by the way, and it's spoken and not written, and then you are conveying it in a written form as a subtitle to be read as if heard as well. To be read as if heard. You need to be read as if heard, and not as and this is one of the other elements here. Talking about participation, there is also dialogue going on in the film. Excuse me. And that is another element which is to be considered. Well, I hope that I've explained to you as much as possible how subtitling goes. Some of the technical issues I didn't talk about, how successful they are, but you can see the reading speed, the number of characters, because it does affect. The shorter the text, the better in the target text, because they need to watch the film, because subtitling requires also elements, not only the text, but also the image and the sound. And you can, of course, Jorge Diaz-Sintes knows this, and also other scholars in subtitling and audiovisual translation, they know this, that it is the text, the image, and the sound all together to make a subtitle. And that is what is challenging for any subtitler, including myself, when I'm subtitling a film. So I need to be aware. I mean, it's a very good thing that you have the target text is relying also on the image. So basically the text that you have, the subtitled text, is supporting the visual, okay? What's happening visually, i.e. the image, and also the audio. If there is a music or sound effects, like for example glass breaking or things like that, do help understand what's going on in the film, and do help in the context, in helping in the context, so that the interconnectedness between the text and context is better, because you see the situation, you understand the situational dimension better, because the sound and the visual or the audio and the visual are provided as well. Thank you.